Welcome to the Bend Don't Break podcast. I'm Aaron Schweitzer, publisher of The Source Weekly and your host for the Bend Don't Break podcast. We are powered by The Source Weekly, Bend's locally owned newspaper. Listeners tune in to find out how our community is dealing or not dealing with the new normal. Today, our guest is Gwenn Wysling. Gwenn moved to Central Oregon in 2007 to work as a human resources director at Sun River Resort. In 2010, she became the executive director of Bethlehem Inn, a nonprofit that provides shelter and aid to the homeless population in Central Oregon. She's a board member of the City Club of Central Oregon, the Rotary Club of Bend, and is the co-chair of the Homeless Leadership Coalition. She graduated from Washington State University with a degree in hotel and restaurant management, and in 2003 completed a language immersion program in Brazilian Portuguese at Middlebury College. Fascinating. Gwenn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. It's wonderful to be here.
We wanted to have you on to talk about the conversion of the Greenway Motel in Redmond to a shelter for those without housing. But before we start onto that, maybe you could just tell us, Bethlehem Inn has been at the forefront of providing services to the homeless. Maybe talk a little bit about what your organization is doing now and how you've adapted to the pandemic, what that's been like in this environment.
Well, the pandemic was an interesting twist in what is already a challenging situation for folks who are experiencing homelessness in our community. With Bethlehem Inn's history spanning over a decade, 2 decades, we started back in 1999 really as a community resource to help people transition from a situation to a better state, more stable one. And fortunately, in the last couple of years, we were able to build a new facility, and that really allowed us to deal with the situation of a pandemic in a way we couldn't have done in an older motel. Right. We would have figured it out, though. We would have. That's kind of how we roll. We just adapt and make things work, which we did for a long time in an old motel. So the CDC guidelines have been challenging in terms of the limitations of how many we can serve. But I am happy to say that it has kept our residents and our staff and our volunteers safe.
And maybe pivoting a little bit, what do you see, especially in Central Oregon, as the leading causes of homelessness? Is there one thing you can point to? I mean, I know it's probably as varied as the people who come in the door.
I think you're right. It is as varied. I think that oftentimes everyone in life experiences traumas. And for some, those carry lifelong situational challenges that make it hard for them to deal with maybe keeping a job or finding housing or finding the right relationship or maintaining some structure and consistency. So I would say that while many of us do have traumas, that folks that struggle day to day in having some of that stability may have had more than their fair share.
Sure. And maybe tell a little bit about Bethlehem's services itself. What would someone find if they are in a position where they need to avail themselves of what you guys offer?
Well, our mission is transforming lives together with shelter, help, and hope. So shelter, first and foremost, is that roof over your head, a place to lay your head on a pillow. It is also a place to maintain your belongings. So you have a secure place to keep your clothing, your computer, your medications, and things like that. And the help and the hope is really a connection that Bethlehem Inn serves as kind of a navigator to get folks connected to the resources that are out there, but that are oftentimes difficult to maneuver and navigate when you're trying to figure out where you're going to stay or what you're going to eat. And we offer 3 meals a day. So folks staying at the inn are provided sustenance to keep them going and off to work, and then just your essentials. the things that so many of us, need. You need shower, bar of soap, toothbrush, toothpaste, those kinds of things that come to us from our community, and an address. People have a place where they can be contacted, where they can send a resume and have a way to get mail. That's not easy to do if you don't have a location or a PO box.
So you're in the news these days because of your work in Redmond. I mean, that community is growing, if not faster than Bend, probably equally as much so, and all the attendant issues that come with that kind of growth. But through Project Turnkey, you're converting the Greenway Motel. I know that you used to have a renovated motel here that you grew out of. So this is kind of back to the egg a little bit for you in Redmond. How did you come to get involved with the City of Redmond on this project? I mean, certainly your reputation opened the door, but what makes you want to step out and be that entity for Redmond as well?
Well, that it has all happened very quickly, and Hannah has done some amazing stories on Project Turnkey through the Source Weekly, which we appreciate and are able to follow on. What an amazing opportunity that was when the legislation of Oregon passed the funding to make this possible, and Oregon Community Foundation said we'll help to steward those funds and make this possible for the smoke victims, as well as for those experiencing homelessness. So prior to the pandemic and prior to Project Turnkey, in the fall of 2019, our board of directors and our staff conducted some stakeholder surveys. We had just finished our campaign. We'd finished our new building. We wanted to pause and say, okay, let's rest.
Celebrate your success, Gwen. Put your feet up for a little bit, right?
Oh, yes. So we took the opportunity to really ask that question of like, what should we be doing next? And so from that is stemming our new strategic plan, which is to end functional homelessness here in Central Oregon together. It's not something that Bethlehem Inn can do alone. Nobody has and can. But together, I think we can come up with some good ideas. Does that mean that there'll never be a shelter needed? No, shelters serve as that transitional place to get people out of homelessness when they fall into that. So when we did our stakeholder survey, it came up that the number one location, if Bethlehem Inn were to expand, we had no plans. We just asked the question, and the number one location was Redmond. So when Project Turnkey came about in December, we immediately knew that it was something that we were capable of doing and could do, and would jump at this opportunity, specifically because it was a pandemic-led initiative, that
Right.
There's just so many people being impacted because of the housing crisis, the employment, just everything COVID. So we set out, and the motel that we located is a very central location, and one that we feel that we've done this before. I think we can make this work.
That's great. Redmond likes to call itself the hub. Do you foresee a different kind of serving a different kind of population there, because it is more centrally located for people who might have travel restrictions, or it's just more accessible, is it not?
It is one of the challenges in Redmond is they don't currently have the kind of transportation system that Bend does.
Yeah.
But as of this summer, thanks to COIC and the CET program, they are going to be launching an enhanced transportation system. So it is just as shelters important, so is it being able to get to and from work or your appointments. And the location that we have there on 5th and 6th Street is very close to services. We've got St. Charles close by. We've got some health clinics. We've got Partners in Care, and there's places for jobs. So folks staying at the Bethlehem Inn typically are working.
Mhm.
If not, once they come into the shelter, they have an opportunity to seek employment and seek income generating possibilities so that they can save up money and find a place to live.
Gwen, who were some of the partners that you had in creating the Greenway Motel project?
Well, City of Redmond was an integral partner for us to, meet with the city council, let them know, a little more about our history. And though we're located in Bend, we serve all of Central Oregon.
Right.
And that service needed a further geographic reach. And we got that understanding, that an agreement that was true. So the city staff has helped us navigate through a conditional use process, and are working with us to do some upgrades. The motel has great bones. It's got a good structure. It's an old motel, and it could use a nice coat of paint, I would say. So, we're looking at grant funding that would help, enhance that in its particular location, because we're in that kind of that urban growth district, and we want to be good neighbors. So we want to make sure that the weeds get pulled and that the place looks respectable, and a place where, like here at the Bend shelter, where people really feel the gratitude of a place for themselves to stay, but also that they want to take care of it too.
I mean, my personal experience with working with the folks in Redmond has been, I wasn't surprised that they got this grant, because they're just a very dynamic group up there. It feels like things come easy to them, not easy to them, but they facilitate things very quickly from start to finish with a project. And it reminds me a little, it's a smaller version. It's where Bend was years ago. And it kind of feels that way when you're working up there. It's kind of refreshing, I found.
We love Redmond, and I think, we're able to jump at this opportunity. And I haven't had a chance to do as much while Homeless Leadership Coalition is a regional program. We've been involved with the service providers, and that's another group. The Redmond service providers are a great partner. It's Jericho Road, it's Mosaic Medical, the action teams that are trying to help people, find the struggles. But Redmond just has its own personality, and it's also been impacted by the growth in Bend, and it has, created a harder environment. But this is the first shelter beds that is year round that will be available in Redmond ever. So we have great partners in Shepherd's House. They run the warming shelter, but now having some permanent year-round beds will make a big impact on having an alternative rather than being on the street or trying to, double up in a cramped house with a number of other people that are struggling.
Great. Well, I think with the way that the populations are growing in Bend and Central Oregon as a whole, a lot of people think, the roads are getting cramped, there's new houses around. I don't think that a lot of people tune into the, things that come with that as well, like an increased homeless population and a need for services and stuff like that. As we are growing, how do you forecast and keep up with those kind of things that come along with it? Especially with like rising unemployment, inability to find housing. I'm throwing a lot at you, I know, but
well, it's interesting because there are so many different impacts, causes, and effects of growth that have been exacerbated by a pandemic and by people then moving to the area. And I think from a service standpoint, it's trying to get ahead of that and understand how do we prevent it in the first place? How do we get upstream? Yes, we need more affordable housing. And it's the conundrum that we face, but I think it's something that if we work better together and have a more collaborated, collective impact approach, we can actually get ahead of some of these things.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's probably a little too soon to be asking this, but given how dynamic you guys are, I mean, what's next? I mean, now that you've got a shelter in Redmond, what does it look like as you look to, continue to serve the populations?
I think you touched on earlier about employment, and I think right now everybody's hiring, including Bethlehem Inn, I might add, and we're struggling to try and find people to get to work. So I think there's going to be an adjustment of once we get through COVID and folks are ready to go back to work. Are there going to be enough jobs, or are these jobs going to be the paying the living wage so that they can find housing? So we always want to be looking at, outside of, the shelter, help and hope. So much of that help is we rely on other resources that we're connecting them to COIC for WorkSource, ready to get people back into the work market. It will continually be adjusting, because in 2010, when I took over, we did have very high unemployment. So we created some work programs, work experience programs. So if the economy takes a little bit of a dip and unemployment is high again, we'll have to look for different ways. But we don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to always try and find the ways that we can connect. But we want to be creative and be anticipating what that next shift will be. I don't know if we're going to, where the next Bethlehem Inn will be. This one's taken us a long time, and I think we're doing it a lot quicker and sooner than we ever anticipated.
Sure, I imagine. Gwen, what are you, shifting a little bit just to the population that you serve, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about the people who avail themselves of your services?
I think a lot of folks assume that they don't work, and in fact, folks are working. And if they're able to work, there's work to be had. And I think that it's a choice, that this is maybe a way of life. And some of that might be, for someone whose experiences chronic homelessness might be challenged because of what I talked about earlier, just traumas of generational poverty and not knowing, how to move beyond the system. I think there's always a question that they are, it's drugs or alcohol, or that may play into it. But with Bethlehem Inn's model as a high barrier shelter, that is one of the things that we create a clean and sober environment. So that distraction is not going to hold them back, and we can help them move forward. So I think some of the other, I don't know, Aaron, what are some of the things that you hear and you guys write about that make this the kind of, what are some of those preconceived notions of why are people homeless?
Yeah, I find that it's, fighting against that, like just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, as if everybody's started on a level playing field and we all got the same boots and the same size feet, and and it's such, in my experience, and certainly not as deep as yours, it is that thing where people think, they get a concept about who or what the homeless population is, and it's pretty narrow. It's people who use drugs and fell out of the workplace and now they can't do it. And I mean, I won't say that I don't think that that's some of that, but usually those causes to me come from something far deeper, and that they can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and it's not that kind of approach. And that's also, I think, some of what got us some of these people there in the first place, is what they really probably needed was someone who was a little more educational, caring, directional, and how and where the bootstraps might be, where, but it's just I think a lot of times people take a very brusque approach. It's like, oh, well, this is what needs to happen. And so, and I got to move on. They make a donation and they move past that. And I think it's more complex than that.
Yeah, complex is really the key. That it's layers and layers of the challenges that people have faced. And I have made my share of mistakes in life. And those things have, if I, have continued on a certain path, I too might have, had more consequences, but the consequences are exacerbated in a climate where, people are just struggling to survive. And when you get in survival, sometimes choices, you don't make your best choices. I know I don't. So it is looking for, I think a place like Bethlehem Inn is very successful, and the people that stay here are successful because they know they're cared about, but that there's accountability, and that accountability is something that I think we all want to feel like we matter, that we're cared for, and that we also make a difference. And when you are able to start saving money and start moving your markers forward because you're have a safe place to eat and sleep, then you're feeling more hopeful. And that's really what draws people to our mission, and is what helps our mission be funded by our community, because they know and trust that we are taking those resources and putting to the best use as possible.
I think one of the things that I know Bethlehem Inn has had great success with is that accountability. I mean, don't you find that in many cases, this is often the first environment where there has been accountability? Some of these folks have gone from bad decision, and they've been allowed to go from bad decision to bad decision, and then they end up coming for your services, and it's like, hey, we don't want you to be high when you're here. We want you to get work. We want you to do these things, and you can't smoke between this time and this time. And it's kind of a head check where they realize, like, hey, these people care, and I gotta adjust my behavior a little bit. And it might be the first time.
And for some folks, when they have finally, done an about face and they're adjusting their behavior, whether, it was, something that got them thrown in jail or drugs or alcohol, it's hard to feel like somebody's going to give you a shot at a job or at housing. And we have, our case management and our staff here will advocate to help make certain that folks are not being discriminated against because of, maybe some past behavior. And, we've worked with our other agencies, but we've also seen staff go to bat and help somebody actually get that housing that they truly deserve. And those are the wins and the things that sometimes you need to be your own advocate, and sometimes that's even hard. So getting a little push along the way with our partner agencies and the other organizations in the community make the difference.
And then I also wanted to ask you, I've asked other people in this field as well about the challenges in dealing with a population that also has some mental health challenges. Do you feel like in the community at large, there is becoming more of a recognition that we're not all on the same plane with regard to our mental health, and that we're in different situations, people need different support systems? Is there that recognition? I mean, I feel like it used to be that people were just marginalized for it. Do you feel there's more awareness of, hey, this is somebody in crisis, we need to take a different approach?
I do, Aaron. I think that, we've seen that in the pandemic of just how being thrust into this reality of social distancing and remote learning and not having our normal social connections has impacted everyone. And, for somebody who might already be challenged in the area of mental health, then that creates, I think, only that much more a challenge is the word that comes to mind, but I think that much more of a obstacle in connecting and trying to find their place. And so that becomes something that, we see more and more. We have, I think, while we understand that, there's a lot of mental health issues amongst the population, we try and address those and make certain that people do get the, who doesn't need somebody to talk to, and have that ability to kind of de-escalate from something that really might not be that serious of a problem, but it can become a bigger problem if you don't get connected to somebody that can, help provide some perspective. And we have a great partnership with Deschutes County Behavioral Health. Colleen Thomas is currently the chair, along with Lindsay Stalings from Mosaic, of the Homeless Leadership Coalition. And there's just a whole network in that HLC network that really helps people.
Have you seen, due to the pandemic, a rise in the number of people coming in who have mental health issues or just might be struggling from that kind of thing? I think you are in a unique position where in some cases you're the first person that a lot of these folks are encountering or willing to help.
I think, there's probably been, some ticks in that in this past year, just because of, there's fear around the virus, and that certainly exacerbates, I think, normal day-to-day fear. So there's been certainly more, but I think it's probably kind of congruent with what's going on in society as well.
Sure. Well, Gwen, we're almost out of time here. Is anything you want to touch on or say before we wrap up, or anything I might have overlooked?
I'm just appreciating the opportunity to speak to a challenge that will be around, and we're doing our best to really see how we can provide more alternatives and better alternatives for folks, and just letting them know that we care.
Great. Gwen, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule, popping a new homeless shelter up, and still getting out there and doing things like this is awesome. I totally appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
All righty. Thanks, Gwen.